Okay, I think we're recording. So I'm in the library right now. It's 12:47, so it's super late. I'm trying to be kind of quiet so I don't bother anybody that's around me. But I wanted to talk about this book that I just finished reading. Separate is Never Equal, Sylvia Mendez and her family's fight for desegregation, and it's written and illustrated by Duncan Tonatiu. And it is a Pura Belpré honor book, which is also super exciting. Um, but some of the things that I wanted to talk about in relation to this book are some of the issues of racism and segregation and how that's affecting children and schools in our country, how it's affected us in the past and how it's continuing to affect us now. So what I kind of wanted to talk about is that let's first start with an overview of this book. So this book is about a little girl named Sylvia Mendez and her two brothers who are forced to go to the Mexican school, even though they live closer to the white school in town. And they're denied entrance to this white school, even though that's where they're zoned to go to school. That's where they should be going to school. And so their dad starts a court case, and they end up winning their court case. And this kind of led to the desegregation of schools in our country, which is a super awesome thing. So that's kind of a basic overview of the plot for this book. The art in this book is really, really cool. It's kind of like a collage style, but also has some drawings, and the author is of Mexican descent, and so he is kind of trying to do traditional style Aztec art. That's kind of his specialty, and he likes to bring that into all of his books. So some of the things you'll notice in the pictures are that all of his characters are in profile. That's kind of reminiscent of traditional Hispanic art. And I wonder if I can pick this detail up. Their ears kind of look like the number 3. In an interview I listened to with him, he also mentions that that's kind of one of the reasons, or also a feature of traditional art. So let's kind of get into the nitty-gritty of this book. I wanted to show some examples of how this book brings up stereotypes and blatant racism, basically, and talk about how that's reflected in the art. I want to talk about how it's confirmed in the book and also refuted in the book. So one of the spreads that really caught my attention was, I have sticky notes in the corner. It's this spread. Give me a minute to look at it. So basically we see Sylvia down here and one of her friends and her 2 brothers, and the school that they go to is right next to a cow pasture. So they have to eat their lunch outside with a bunch of flies and cows and cow poop everywhere, and it's embarrassing, not very nice place to eat your lunch. So from this, we can kind of guess that some of the stereotypes that we'd be talking about with this book are that Mexican people are dirty, and we have this overarching theme of all the Hispanic characters in the book working on farms. That's kind of stereotypical. We see them sitting on the ground in the dirt. This whole background is meant to represent dirt. They're right next to cows and an electric fence that'll shock you if you touch it. So we see these stereotypes being confirmed of, the Mexican kids are being forced to eat outside in the dirt because they're dirty and that's where they belong. That's definitely not true, but one of the stereotypes that shows up in this book. So this is before Sylvia and her family get moved to the white school across town. But we see another spread later when Sylvia and her family are testifying in the court case that's going on to help get her family into the white school and all other Mexican kids, Hispanic kids, Mexican American kids to have the opportunity to go to these schools. One of the but one of the details in this book is that Sylvia is an American citizen. Her dad moved from Mexico. Her mom is from Puerto Rico. They're both American citizens. She's an American citizen. She speaks perfect English, and yet the white people won't let her go to their white school. So this is another spread that kind of refutes the stereotypes that we talked about in the last one. They're all sitting in the courtroom, This page has Sylvia's parents on it, and this page has Sylvia and her two brothers. You can see that they have their hair combed and they're wearing nice clothes. They're all sitting in rows, really neat. Sorry, hope you can see that. And the text on the page is talking about how the people who are fighting against Sylvia to keep her out of the good school are saying that she's, she's not clean, she has bad social behavior, cleanliness of mind, manner, and dress. Hispanic kids have problems with lice and impetigo and tuberculosis. They have generally dirty hands, face, neck, and ears. So again, we're seeing the stereotype of Sylvia and her family being cast as dirty, not as smart as the other kids, not as polite as the other kids, not having any manners. And people are saying these really mean things about Sylvia and her family, how they have no manners. And yet Sylvia and her family are sitting quietly in the courtroom, letting these people say really mean things about them, not saying anything back. So I think that kind of refutes the stereotype that these mean white people are saying, that Sylvia and her family don't have good manners when they're being very polite to people who are being super rude to them. But in this spread, we can see that, Sylvia's and her brothers and her whole family are sitting very quietly. They're not dirty. They look like they have manners. They're performing normal social behaviors as being quiet in a courtroom, not talking unless you're the one being spoken to. So that's kind of an example of looking at this through a lens of critical race theory, how the pictures and the text combined either promote or refute stereotypes. Anyway, so yeah, this is a really cool book. I think it's interesting to hear about another court case that led to the desegregation of schools. That's a really important thing in our history. And a lot of times we hear about the Brown versus Board of Education case that went to the Supreme Court, but this one is just as influential, just as important. And this author has a lot of other really cool books that are all about, sorry, shaking the table. This author has a lot of other really cool books that are about some similar topics and themes. So that is Separate is Never Equal by Duncan Tonatia. Super awesome book, fun to read, the art's exciting, it's a quick read, but has some good information in it, and it's based on a true story, so that's always exciting that it's historical fiction. And a lot of this book was written from interviews that were conducted with Sylvia after the fact, so that's super cool too that she had some input in this book.